Artera. He's also, if you have not listened to his podcast, he's the host of the CyberHub podcast. It is a great podcast. I've been listening to it for years. If you haven't listened to it, you should listen to it. James is, like I said, a CISO that works, leads, and dedicated to the security and business mission to ensure the continue and fluidity of cybersecurity within the businesses. His experience has served as a CTO, CIO, CISO, but his passion is the intersection of security and business where innovation and thinking out of the box are needed to exceed. Like I mentioned, he hosts the CyberHub podcast, which you guys can catch on any place that you listen to your podcast. He has CISO Talk, a new noteworthy privacy podcast called Goodbye Privacy. He's a public speaker, event host, and he has all kinds of things he does. He has served on the board of advisors of NTSC and currently serves as the vice president of programming for AFCEA, the Atlantic chapter of Israel American Council. He works with several nonprofits. He enjoys he has a song. He likes espressos. Is that what it says?
Espresso, bourbon, and
yeah.
Espresso.
James is an awesome guy. He sits on our board of directors as one of our advisors. He's been a big supporter of FutureCom. We're super excited to have him here today. He's going to be speaking on elevating your security program through business enablement. So everyone, let's welcome. And one more thing before you welcome him. When you guys have questions at the end, please wait for my tech team to come to you because we have about 200 people that are watching virtually. So we want to make sure that they are hearing the questions. So with that being said, everyone, welcome James Azar.
Thank you, sweetie. Thank you. How's lunch? Good? All right, so there was a confusion getting here today. Who went to the wrong place this morning? Okay, so we're all in the same boat together. That's good. So group suffering is a thing. So thank you, Kim, for having me here and giving me the opportunity. My name's Kim introduced me, but I'll kind of give you the short version of a very old bio. I'm the CISO, currently the interim CIO at Artera. We're right across the street from here. And I'm primarily going to talk about enabling the business. So my slides are going to have nothing but pictures on them in a few words. So just FYI, if you want deeper stuff, you're going to have to raise your hand, talk to me after. Everything I talk about, I've got kind of documented in some place or another, and I'm happy to share. I don't hoard information. I think it's really positive to share it. Let's talk a little bit about something we've talked about in security for the last 15 years, going from the Department of No to the Department of Yes, But, or as someone else have said it, the Department of No N-O to the Department of K-N-O-W, of actually knowing. My buddy Kane McGlarity likes to say that one quite frequently. And so when we talk about moving from blocking to enabling, how many people here have heard the new what's the new buzzword? I like audience interaction. So if I sit up here and talk all day, it's going to be like, it's okay, but what's the new cybersecurity buzzword? It's got AI in it. Who remembers 5 years ago when AI and then they had to change it to ML because, yeah, it's all in the cloud. Cloud, AI. So we're going to talk a little bit less about that. We're going to talk more about what the business actually wants to do and then how we enable it from a security perspective. Primarily, there's a few things that go around kind of enabling cyber. And it goes into enabling the business to understand what the mission is. And kind of a show of hands, when you were hired wherever you are today, has anyone sat down with you and explained how the business makes money? Yeah, if you look around the room, there's maybe a dozen hands in a room of maybe 200 people. Okay, I'll say half the room at this point, all right? That's been a primary struggle, I can tell you from a leadership perspective. My number one goal when I onboard someone into my team is understand how we operate as a company, where we make our revenue. because that's going to become critical to understanding how we evaluate risk and make decisions for the business to enable the business to actually move forward. And in today's economy, there's something kind of going on in terms of everyone kind of seeing layoffs happening. Has anyone's organization been impacted by layoffs? Show of hands. Yes. Anyone here been laid off in the last year? Right? We're seeing these layoffs, and some of it has to do with AI, and some people say it's the economy, and I say there's a combination of things. We're not going to go through a microeconomic lesson today. I'm happy to talk about that, my philosophy as to what's happening after the fact. I actually wrote about it over the weekend. But as a security team, enabling the business means we have to move fast with the speed of business. We don't really have the luxury of time of studying. That time of study where during cloud adoption, do you remember how long it took to adopt cloud? That kind of graph of cloud adoption slowly moving, slowly, kind of gently going up. Cloud continuously kind of with slow adoption. How fast is AI getting adopted in your organization today? Breakneck pace, right? Unbelievable pace. The fact is, when you think of what was the fastest company to get to $100 million in ARR in the cyberspace? And in general, was Wiz, right? Wiz made it in 18 months. Wiz went from 0 revenue to 100 million in ARR in 18 months. And that, in every economic impact, like in every economic circle, is unbelievable. We don't have VCs in the room, but I've spent a lot of time with VCs. Everyone kind of tries to say, is Wiz kind of the exception or the rule? And they're the exception. It's clearly they're the exception until Cursor. And everyone here heard of Cursor? No? Cursor. It writes code for you. We've got hands up there, right? Who uses Cursor or Windsurf or Lovable? Anyone here uses Claude Code, maybe? Right? So Cursor reached $100 million in ARR in 12 months. 12 months. Why are we talking about that? Because specifically when you think of secure, fast, and together, understand that if you work in an organization where you have developers constantly writing code and deploying code, well, we're now deploying code faster than ever. We're writing code faster than ever, and we don't even understand the context of the code we're writing anymore because Cursor and Windsurf and Claude Code are doing it. So the entire IDE, the entire CI/CD pipeline in your organization is transformed because your developers are saying, I can write more code faster using these tools. And they want to make that happen. They want to write more code. And we as security practitioners at that point have to understand that. And we don't get the time to study. With cloud adoption, who was part of cloud adoption? Leadership or in engineering, architect, GRC, IT, right? Infrastructure. We had time. There were discussions. There were trials and errors. We would set up a dev environment. We would deploy some code. We would build an application. We would let it sit there. We would test against it because we had the on-prem, right? And moving from on-prem required a big project that you hired a big company to help you do. You don't have any of that with AI. That does not exist. Because the individual, every single person in this room today uses AI in one form, fashion, or another. But in our business, our developers specifically, and I'm just talking about developers now, I'll get into legal in a little bit because that's a scarier thought of having ChatGPT be your lawyer. But your developers are writing code using AI. They're deploying that code using AI. They're connecting AI into their CI/CD pipelines, and we have to come in and we have to secure it, and we don't have the time to study. So we literally have to practice cyber. I've always said I practice cybersecurity because like doctors, it's trial and error. I'm gonna give you one med, it may or may not work, it may help you with your condition, it may help one condition but introduce another one, and then we're gonna have to deal with it and maybe change it altogether. And cybersecurity is the exact same thing as medicine when it comes to that. So that brings us to understanding the mission of the business, which is when we work together on a secure, fast, and we're enabling the business, if we understand the mission, then we can understand what it is. And I'm going to say something that's not very popular in security circles, because I hear a lot of my team, I mean, I'm new in my role. I'm a month in, right? So I'm still in my honeymoon stage. Whenever you take a new role, you're always you're like, I'm in the best place ever, right? And then you slowly start to dig, and you find the dead bodies, and you go, you find the injured person on the sidelines. You go, wow, all those areas of risks. But guess what? Something I kind of had to take in my entire career as a practitioner. I don't get to decide the risk the business wants to take on. I don't get to make that call. That's not at my pay level. Anyone here been in the service? Wore a uniform? Stand up if you have. If you're, give them a hand, folks. These are Veterans Day is next week, so thank you all for your service. We have a chain of command in the military, right? You got a chain of command. Your chain of command, whatever the general decides is what kind of comes down, and you go by it, whether you like it or not. In the corporate world, that's your board of directors. Not the CISO, not the CIO. Rarely, in most cases, the CEO, the CFO, and the board of directors get to determine the risk appetite that the business is willing to take. And does it put our backs against the wall sometimes as security practitioners? Absolutely. We're not happy about it. But guess what? That's the risk the business is willing to take. And understanding the mission and understanding the risk of the business becomes critical to becoming really good security practitioners as you move along. Because there's risk and then there's opportunity, and you've got to weigh the two. And a lot of times when we talk to our CFOs or our CEOs, if you're in a leadership position, or if you're an analyst or GRC, you're using the word risk. And I despise the word risk. I like the word opportunity, because opportunity opens an entire vision to the business of what we can do, because the business is always looking for opportunities to increase their EBITDA. If you don't know what EBITDA is, ChatGPT can help you, but it's earning before tax interest. It's what your CFO and your CEO really care about. It's what your investors care about. It's what your shareholders care about, your EBITDA. Opportunity shows bottom line profitability, productivity, efficiency. All of that comes into play. When we shift from risk and we move to opportunity and we present specific challenges, let's go back to the example I just used around Cursor. $100 million in 12 months. $100 million in 12 months. From the moment they launched, they reached $100 million. That's not corporate accounts, that's B2C. That's end users. That's end users. They got to $100 million in 12 months selling to us, to the developers, to the engineers. They didn't go to JP Morgan Chase and say, here's Cursor, give me $10 million or $20 million a year. They didn't get to that. That's, by the way, the difference between Cursor and Wiz. Wiz got to $100 million in 18 months, doing it selling to corporations. Cursor did it selling to people. And that's the scary part. And then we, the companies, your CTOs, your VP of engineering, your chief engineering officers, knew your developers were using it, and if you tried to block it, you know what they were doing? Anyone know? Anyone know the Cursor workaround? They were using Cursor to write code, they were deploying it into their personal IDE, then merging it through GitLab or GitHub into the corporate IDE. It was that easy. Or they were doing it in Slack. I can tell you, I caught guys doing it in Slack. They were using it. And it doesn't matter if you blocked it. I mean, I remember sitting in a room 2 years ago with fellow CISOs here in Atlanta at an event, and it was a dinner, and someone said, who's blocking AI in all their environments? And I saw the hands go up, and I cringed a little bit inside, because I understood that what's happening is we've introduced a whole new opportunity surface for threat actors to take advantage of, and we haven't properly addressed it, because our approach is, if I don't see it, it doesn't exist. But again, when we move away from that, we move to the opportunity to the business to actually derive investment in security, because when a business invests in security, they invest in the art of resilience. And resilience is going to be key because at the end of the day, the more technology we use, the more resilient we have to become. And all right, 2 fat finger DNS issues in back-to-back. Guys, remember that? I heard someone talk about CrowdStrike earlier, but no. To me, it's those happening AWS and Microsoft DNS issues week after week. Resilience became key. How many people actually had a plan for it? Show of hands. How many kind of waited for Microsoft to resolve it? Right? Resilience, opportunity, right there. My first conversation was opportunity. I'm new in my role, honeymoon stage. Everyone likes listening to me still. That'll quickly change, right? But it became an area of opportunity. What's our business continuity plan look like if Microsoft went off? What's our communication method like if Teams doesn't work, right? If Slack doesn't work, if our applications went down, what does that look like? And people couldn't really give me the response I was looking for, which takes us to prioritize, protect, and perform. When we talk about opportunities, we have to look at where the business is going and what that mission is. We've got to take priority into the fact that the business is going to dive headfirst into a specific goal. If our plan is to utilize more AI at every single one of our endpoints and every single one of our products, that's what we're going to push out. That's the goal because the CEO is selling that to investors because we're talking about it to our CAB, our customer advisory board. We're talking about it to our customers. We're moving it across. Marketing wants to sell AI. AI sells, right? Well, now we've got to prioritize to understand that we have to keep up with that pace because if not, we're going to be quickly left behind. Which takes us to the area of opportunity, which is protect and perform. Those are the 2 things that really require all of our attention, and they require something that AI can never replace. You know what that is? Human capital. Every single person in this room is human capital. And human capital is the only place, and it's the only thing smart enough today. 20 years from now, someone will replay this and be like, ha, you were wrong. AI replaced you. AI replaced human capital. Maybe, but until then, we get to work on the protecting and performing that protection in line with the business priorities, which goes trust as the foundation. How many people trust AI? I saw one hand. Why? Sorry? Okay. So some people trust AI, I guess. One person. Who else trusts AI? Anyone else? Who doesn't trust AI? Okay. We don't trust AI, but you know what people in our organizations do trust? The people they work with, right? Primarily. Not to say there aren't workplace scrimmages here and there. People don't always get along. But primarily your human capital and your ability to build bridges across various teams help you get to the idea of protect and perform. And to protect and perform, I have to use trust as a foundation of everything I do. One thing I constantly kind of talk about, even on the podcast, is when you don't know, and you've got to go and study. But you've always got to be able to say yes, but, and let me get back to you. And when you say let me get back to you, really do get back to that person. Really go about it. Don't try to kill it. Procrastination is one of the worst qualities. And sometimes as security practitioners, when we don't know something, we kind of get that sense of intimidation, almost of, if I don't know it, then what? No one knows it. No one knows everything. Cybersecurity is a field very, very wide, really wide, requires a lot of different disciplines and knowledge. When you go to a hospital, there's a general practitioner doctor in the ER. They can treat your wound right there on the spot. But if you've got a brain injury, they're doing the triage, but they're not diagnosing you. They're taking you to a neurologist, someone who studied brain. So that person can actually diagnose the impact of whatever your injury was. And cybersecurity is identical. As a CISO, I don't know every single discipline well. I don't. I understand them. I rely on my team, the people on my team that are really smart, the people that I've hired, the people that are part of my organization to be smarter than me, to be able to identify these things and be able to give me that information. And I trust them to be able to go and do that work. but I also have the mission valued aligned to what the organization is trying to do. I don't get to determine the risk. I don't get to say no, because when you get to say no, you're going to get overridden. And yeah, it feels nice a year later to say, I told you so. But the business isn't going to look at it and say, we should have listened to James when he said, I told you so. They're going to say, what was the difference in reaching that decision? What was the reason for it? And what opportunities did we miss along the way? And that plays into it. It plays into it from a whole slew of reasons, because we have to accelerate what we do in security. We can no longer afford to kind of be, best way I could say it, we can no longer afford to be complacent with security, to go slow, to go about something where we now weigh how fast we move. The business is going to move at the speed it moves in. If you work in a company that moves fast and your security team moves slow, you're constantly going to be behind, you're going to be frustrated, and you're never going to be able to make any headway, because your risks never catch up. You've got to be able to move at the speed that the business moves in, and that means that you've got to be able to identify the mission of the business. You've got to be able to build that human trust, that human capital that helps you have the... Who works remote still? Who's in office? All right, remote C. Who's in office? Who believes that in office you get more done? Who believes I get more done working from home? Interesting. So I'll tell you something very, very, very interesting. When I took the role at Artera, the CIO who was there, who's no longer there because on my 4th day he resigned, there's nothing like coming to work on a Thursday morning and your boss says, sit down. Anyone ever sit down when someone tells you to sit down? Anyone? Because I don't. You tell me to sit down, I'm bucked up, I'm ready to pull, right? Like, I'm like, what do you got, right? And he goes, I resigned this morning. And I go, that's magnificent. It's great. So you hired me, I started on Monday. Staking on the fact that you and I are going to build a vision together, and now you quit. For Halloween, I dressed up as him, but then I decided that I don't dress up as quitters. So, sorry, Kramer. He'll probably watch this and curse at me later. But the whole story goes into the idea of accelerating. Because what I did a minute after he left my office, is I accelerated into his role. Right? I reached out to the CEO, I reached out to the CFO, I reached out to the general counsel. I highlighted, I said, look, I'm new, but this is my background, and I accelerated with it. And today I'm the interim CIO and the CISO. And we'll see if I get it full time. I don't know. Right? But I'd like to, because I think it'd be a good trial, right, as a CIO. But I accelerated with technology, I accelerated with the decisions, and that's what it has to be. A lot of people pause. We don't live in the era of pause anymore. Not in business, because our businesses are moving at lightning speed. And if you don't believe me, just look at the stock market. Look at anything else. We're often we're constantly in kind of our own little place in security, where we're talking security metrics, mean time to detect, mean time to respond, our KPIs, our vulnerabilities, our CVEs. But all of those are just a small piece of a bigger puzzle for the business. And to be better practitioners, if anyone who wants to get promoted? Who wants to get promoted to a director level, VP, senior vice president, eventually take the suicidal role of a CISO? Anyone? There's ambition in the room, thankfully, right? I mean, to do that, you have to understand the business. You're not going to get a job as a CISO if you don't understand business. It's not going to happen. The days of CISOs kind of being security practitioners only are gone. We're now technologists, and we're finance. And the last keynote I gave at FutureCon, I talked about all the different things a CISO should wear, all the different hats of being a chief revenue officer. I know we hate those when we get them. You ever get a LinkedIn invite and it says CRO on it, and you think risk, and then you look and you see revenue, and you go, like, stop it, man. I don't want you to sell me anymore. Leave me alone, right? But we're in sales. When you're in a security leadership role, you're selling your security program, your vision, your human capital, and everything you do to the rest of the business to entrust you to be the backbone to whatever they're working on. And that trust has to accelerate with technology. We have to be on top of it. We can't be the people kind of sitting in the back. We can't afford it. And you've got to be at those discussions early, and the only way to do it is that human capital. I've said it, and I've said it 500 times, and I'll keep saying it because it works. When you build relationships with people in the organization, you'll find out things that are happening that you didn't know were ongoing because no one thought, it's rarely because they're being mean. We don't want security to come in here because they're going to shut it all down. It's because they overlook it. Because we've never presented the opportunity of having security at the table good enough to get us thought of to be part of every one of those discussions as they're kind of maturing in the idea phase of how we do something. And that only happens with human capital, with saying yes, not saying no. With working with these folks and understanding what the mission is and aligning to that mission. Because then we move from policies. How many GRC people here are going to hate the next part? Oh, please don't hate me for this. But we got to move away from being policy driven. We really have to. Policies are nice. We need them. They're part of corporate governance. I get it. But they're not what makes cyber. They're not what makes us good security practitioners. They set the guidelines. They're the guardrails. It's kind of like the lane and the highway you drive under. But we've got to move to a partnership model. One of the key things I've encouraged my team to do in my new role is, as we now review policies end of year for next year, let's involve the various business folks in some of our security policy to understand where it's blocking, where it's enhancing, and why. So that we can actually write a policy that's effective and a partnership to the business. Sorry, GRC folks, I know we always like to write a really big policy. And then I go look at that policy, and I've done this before, and you see all the exceptions in ServiceNow for all the times they've asked to bypass your policy. And you spent all this time writing the policy. AI does it now for you too, by the way. Right? AI can write policies for you now. Has anyone tried it? Anyone try it? Okay, don't show hands. Don't show hands. If your boss is in the room, do you really want him to know that's what you're doing? Right? You don't want someone to know you're using AI to write your security policy, do you? Red shirt, all right? But you want to move to a partnership model. Cybersecurity is not adversarial. Our adversary are the threat actors out there trying to reduce the effectiveness of our business, hurt the reputation of our companies, go after the livelihood of the people in that business. They're trying to make money for something they had no right to earn, right? They're plain criminals. The business is not our adversary. The business is our partner. The various aspects, the revenue generation side of the business is your biggest partner. Anyone ever used third-party risk to really generate, show bottom line of how you can expedite sales cycles for a business? Anyone done that experiment before? Yes, no? Anything? All right, I'm going to go into that right now then. So I'll explain. Third-party risk, how many people get surveys and questionnaires? SARS, right? Answer, tell me what you're doing. Send me your SOC 2 Type 2. You guys, everyone here who's GRC or in leadership knows that, right? What we did is we automated a lot of that process, and then I had in my last role, not in this role. So I had someone really just kind of run this whole thing. And what we ended up doing is I took our data analytics guy and I said, hey, show me how long in the sales cycle in Salesforce we get stuck on the security questionnaire side. Meaning that's the holdup to move forward with winning the business. And let's say it was an average of 28 days. We automated it, we used a whole bunch of stuff, we got it down to 4 days. So we reduced that number from 28 to 4. By 24 days, we reduced our time to bid on a contract. We reduced that time to be able to move forward with actually winning the business and making revenue for the company. So if we did that, that improves the productivity of the sales team. That increases our revenue stream. That has a direct impact on the bottom line of the company. Direct. So you take that number and you go 24 days is when we saved? What does those 24 working days equal? How much money does that cost to the company? And when you understand that and you take that money and you're able to put it on a slide and show it to your leadership and you go, we helped save the company $6 million. We've also partnered with sales to drive through a lot more deals, and the close rate went up this quarter. We closed more business than ever before. You're not responsible for closing more business ever before. You've just allowed the salespeople to optimize their own performance, so you contributed to it. That number is something you earned. It's something you built. It's something you did. You aligned to the mission of the business. You partnered. You became part of the equation, and now you're showing that value. That's the investment in cybersecurity. That's the opportunity there. And you want to focus on the KPIs that really do matter. MTTI, MTTR, MTTD, everyone's heard those, right? That last number I just gave you, that's a KPI that matters to the business. It won't matter to, outside of security, anyone care what your mean time to detection is? Anyone ever gone to a board meeting and saw someone in the board go, oh my God, that long? Never happened. Been to I don't know how many board meetings I've been to. I've never seen anyone look at an MTD number and go, wow. Most of the time they don't care. But when we showed that security enabled the business to move faster in acquiring companies, that we've kept the business within the acceptable risk scenario for the company, where we've upgraded our cyber insurance, where we've streamlined our ability to deploy code faster than ever before for the company. And because we did that, we're now deploying code above industry average, securely, with the right guardrails in place. That matters to the board of directors. That's how you translate that investment. And then there's the cost of inaction. The cost of inaction is literally why my podcast is over 1,000 episodes. Right? It's literally the cost of inaction sometimes. It's a vulnerability. It's an ASA that's end of life that the Chinese are partying on, that no one does anything about because we're constantly going back and forth with tickets, because there's no clear initiative, because there's not a partnership, because there isn't that human trust and human capital, because there isn't an understanding of, yes, I know that's your job, but if you're overwhelmed, mister, let me help you do it. What do I need to do to help you get there? What can I do? I know I'm not supposed to do it. I know it's not in my title to help you, Mr. Infrastructure. Rip that ASA out, but we can't keep it on, because this inaction is going to end up reflecting badly on you, and I don't want that to happen. Because I've got the track record, I've done my CYA, I've got all the tickets, I filed them all. You didn't do your job. It's your responsibility. The problem with that, though, is that cost of inaction, when something does happen, and something always happens, right? Everyone's here been part of an event at some point or another, an incident, the big B word, right? Everyone's been in that place before. We've all been there. It's kind of our PTSD for cybersecurity practitioner, right? That all of a sudden custom Slack channel or Teams channel or that email you get from your IR platform that lets you know, all right, we're in it. We're in it, that's it. There's no getting ready for it. We're in it right now, it's happening, and I've got to do my part. Well, that inaction of not taking that ASA out, yeah, that'll be in the ARR report. But do you think it's going to be a collective blame? It's a collective failure. And the pointing the finger has never brought me partnerships, never helped me build trust. And as practitioners, we have to be mission focused to the business's goals. And so we have to focus on the cost of inaction, because the cost of inaction for us is catastrophic. Because who doesn't sleep during an incident? Outside of the security guys, the infrastructure guys, the application team, the network team, right? We're rebuilding. We're trying to get the business back up and running. That cost of inaction is colossal. I think IBM said it's like 14.6 million. Guys, have you guys followed like the Jaguar Land Rover case? Anyone followed that? The first government bailout ever for a cybersecurity incident in the UK. £1.5 billion for those that don't use pounds, because in 1776 we told the king to go F himself and we beat the US dollars, right? So that's about $2 billion. Jaguar Land Rover, the guys that make those amazing cars that many of you may drive or enjoy or like to look at on the road, right? They didn't have cyber insurance. They outsourced their IT. They're owned by Tata Motors. They had it outsourced to Tata Consulting. They got hit with a cyber attack that forced them to take production down for almost 50 days. And the downstream impact on the British economy, because they accounted for 4% of the British GDP, was so severe that companies were getting ready to lay off and shut off their businesses. Companies that were supporting Jaguar Land Rovers, other manufacturers or services firms, were ready to shut it down. And the British government, in an effort to keep their only thing in their car economy that's going outside of Rolls-Royce is Jaguar Land Rover, right? They forked over £1.5 billion, $2 billion, over 5 years to bail them out. Today, we're November 5th, correct? This attack happened on September 1st. They're only at 23% of their pre-cyber attack production rate. They were producing 1,000 cars a day in those manufacturing facilities in the UK. They're now barely producing 200. They're not going to get to 1,000, according to their latest report, until April of 2026. Land Rovers and Jaguars are about to get really expensive, right? Because they're going to be in short. I mean, they don't have that much demand in the US, but in Europe, they're in high demand. The cost of inaction is a $2 billion bailout by the British. That's the first cyber bailout for a cybersecurity incident. It's the first bailout ever for a cybersecurity incident that they're going to have to pay back over 5 years. Because resilience is strength, and Jaguar Land Rover didn't have it. Their dealerships couldn't sell a car. They couldn't service a Jaguar at an authorized Jaguar dealership because all of the plans were online and they took all of their systems offline. And they didn't get their first system back online until day 40. That's October 10th. From September 1st to October 10th, if you didn't know how to work on a Jaguar and you were a young technician that had the iPad, that connected the iPad to the car to get all the details, and the car was broken, that system did not work for 40 days. Resilience. Talked about the mission of the business. What's the mission of Jaguar Land Rover? Make cars, right? Service cars, take care of the customer. What did they all miss in there with the cost of their inaction? OT attack, IT attack, moved laterally, killed their OT networks. They had to shut down their manufacturing. Anyone here in manufacturing? We've got a few hands. How difficult is it to restart a manufacturing line once you shut it down? Anyone want to take a guess? We don't have anyone here from Coca-Cola. They can tell you all about it. Once you take a manufacturing line off, it takes forever to get it back up and running. Forever. It's difficult. It's hard. They didn't have that resilience. But resilience in other cases is strength. When you go through an event and 3 days later your business is back up and operating, you're shining. That's the investment in cyber. And when Gartner or Forrester or whoever tells you the average outage of a cyber incident is 21 days and you're able to get back and running in 3, take however many days 21 days would have been, and what those 18 days cost to your business. If you make $1 million a day, for the sake of easy math, you saved $18 million, right? Just simple math, nothing complex. That's a good email. That's a good number to look at. And when you build on that, and then you build that human capital, that trust, and you focus on a culture of security, because you're in those conversations early on, at the ideation stage. Not, here's the plan, we've architected it, now help us secure it, but rather, this is what we want to do. How do we do it? And you move at the speed. You've built that human capital. You've spent time with them. You enabled the business, and then you align the investment in security to the success of that project. Where you can take legacy data of your organization and say, before, when we wanted to do a new application, it would take us 9 months to get it out the door. We're now doing it in 3. We've got 6 more months in productivity. What's that 6-month cost to business? And you did it because 3 out of those 9 months were all security. Pen tests, securing it, locking it down, going back another sprint, fix this, QA again, run it through this, run it through that, and now you're able to do it in 3 months. You shaved 3 months of security work because you were in early. That shows our direct ROI to the business. This is how we become more relevant to the business as security practitioners. This is how our careers advance. This is how people stop looking at us as security geeks. There's nothing wrong with that. To see us as becoming business enablers with a mind of security, with enabling the business, because all we're thinking about is not how to say no, not how to shut something down, but how to be a partner, how to shake hands. And we're talking the language that everyone else in the business understands. Because guess what? Their bonuses are relying on them delivering at a speed the business asks them to deliver in. And if we don't match that speed, if we're the reason they don't get a bonus, or their bonus isn't 100%, it's 90% because security missed part of it, they're forever going to remember it. Because you took money away from their family. You took money off the table for them. And vice versa for us. That same relationships apply to our bonuses on the security side when they're relying on the business. So we have to integrate the security frameworks in everything we do, but we have to do it in a way that's not policy-driven, but partnership-driven. Sorry, GRC people. All right? And it has to be built on human capital and aligning to the business. And if you don't know how your company makes money, then when you leave here today, that should be a question you should ask someone. How do we make our money? Where does our revenue derive from? What department is responsible? Is it the product team? Is it the sales team? Is it a joint effort? It's likely always a joint effort between product and sales. But you've got to integrate it. And you've got to move from this aspect of compliance to confidence. We have to trust. I know that's a hard thing to say, right? Trust. Because what's a security buzzword? Zero trust, yeah. I love how everyone just kind of knew that. Zero trust, so defeated. Like, oh, zero trust is so defeating. But we have to move from the aspect of compliance to confidence, to building out the tools to be more integrated. And by the way, from a security vendor perspective, I'll say that a lot of the security vendors have reached this point. They've reached the point of being integrated into the business. They know that the CISO may be the signer, but the developer is really the user. And they're moving down that route. They know that legal may be doing that. So we have to move to confidence. And finally, we have to be able to understand how security relates to business growth. One key metric I always have kind of sitting in my back pocket is I have a list of our competitors, right? And I kind of watch our competitors. I always do. And whenever they have an outage, any sort of downtime, something where I realize I can correlate it directly to our sales force, and I see more new leads coming in because their customers are now looking at us as an option because they're unhappy with that. Those are things that come into play for me. They come into play because I can immediately line that up to the fact that they're having these issues. We're not. We're a little bit more resilient. They're less. So now let's convert that into actual money time growth on our board discussions, on our executive discussions, and even internally in our team. One of the security KPIs I really love is how much time are we reducing in friction for the business? And anytime we reduce friction by a week, then we take the cost of that week of productivity for the company, and that becomes a number we use to show value for how we secure business growth, how we impact EBITDA, all of those different things. And then finally, our compass should always be to protect, enable, and grow. And that's going to be really, really big for us because to grow our security program, we have to create that culture of trust and the human capital aspect to it. And a prime example of that I'll give you from my days in banking, right? We were kind of transitioning to a new backup system for our banking system. And anyone here in banking? Lovely. Everyone in banking knows you have two systems that run your bank, one that's live, one that's kind of sitting in the background. They're not the same vendor. They're two very different vendors. Anyone in energy, power, oil, gas, you kind of have a primary system in your facility, and then you have a secondary system. So you could have Honeywell and Schweitzer, and they're sitting, one's primary, one's secondary. The reason you do that is resilience, key, right? That becomes a really big part of it. Well, enable, protect, and grow essentially enables that for your business. If we have two systems, but I'm in a company that can't have two systems, then what happens? How do I grow the company? How do we become part of that bottom line, right? And how do we protect the business through our traditional tools like our EDRs, MDRs, XDRs, or CSPMs, DSPMs, DLP, all of those traditional tools that we always have. But then how do we use those tools to actually enable and grow? And how do they help actually streamline the process to reduce friction? And so a few kind of, those are the key takeaways. You can take a picture. I don't like reading off a slide. I want to open this up to Q&A. Questions? If you have a question, just raise up. Otherwise, I'll give you guys time to eat dessert. Got one? Nothing? All right. Back there, right there.
Do you mind speaking more about your process with automating eliminating your timeline for your sales to business revenue?
Yeah, 100%. So it's one of the early ways as a CISO I've found to really show investment on cyber. So what I did is I took the traditional flow of a sale through every process of it, right? From discovery call to bid to clearing essentially all the hurdles to win the business. And part of that is third-party risk management, right? You're going to get a questionnaire that you have to answer, that you've got to streamline in order to win that business, in order to win that contract, in order to get revenue through the door. So in that specific use case, that time frame in Salesforce was 28 days, meaning from the moment we got the email asking us for that information to the moment it was answered, it took 28 days to do it. So nearly a month. It was a month cog in the system for the sales process to actually be able to get a deal done. So we automated a lot of it. We built a trust center. That was one of the big things we did. So we had a lot of data available. We used AI tools, especially in the last few years. That was even more relevant because we would upload our SOC 2 and all of our policies. The AI tool would get the questionnaire, answer all of it. It will mark the ones where it didn't know what to answer. And then it would attach all the relevant evidence to it. And we would get it. Someone, our GRC analyst, would review it with the business, with the sales team, make sure it's all good, and send it to the customer. And that went from 28 days to 4 days. And so we took those 28 days and we said, the sales guy is project managing internal management to answer that questionnaire because it's his deal, right? So he sends it to someone and then 3 days later he goes, what's the status? 3 days later, he generates a call a week later, right? A very expensive call because it typically has the sales guy, their director, someone in the success side, someone in IT, maybe someone in product, and someone in security. That's a very expensive call. To talk about answering a questionnaire, that call alone could cost the company thousands of dollars. By automating all of that, we took all those numbers down and then we said, what does that do for productivity for sales and everyone else that was part of that process? And we took just the ballpark figure of cost. I went to finance. I went to the finance team and I said, tell me what an hour of these people's times is worth to the company. And we said, if we shaved all those hours off by doing it, what does that equal in productivity to the bottom line of the business? And that was the number we used, right? That's essentially how we proved it. We automated as much as we possibly could. Then the only call we had with the salesperson was the one right before we submitted it. and that timeline for us on average was 4 days. In some cases, it was a day or two, right? But the timeline before that was, the average timeline was 28 days. 28 days to get that done. So that's where you prove value in GRC. Anything else? Yes.
Hey, James, you've done a great job expressing the importance of business understanding all throughout, top to bottom in a company. As we look at the past several years, so many businesses have turned from the CISO to the COO and the CEO, from having long-term leadership to leadership positions that are being held for 2 to 5 years sometimes, with high turnover rates in the C-suite. Evidently, that has had an impact on how businesses look at finances, making money, the short-term bonus for the 5 years versus the business stability for the next 20 years. Those kinds of outlooks are at play and being affected by C-suite turnovers. How does that affect risk management? Does that make things better or worse? How do we go about doing what we need to do in a business environment that is turning over more rapidly?
So I love that question because I think it plays right into what's happening right now. We've seen a lot of CEOs step down recently, right? A lot of leadership replacement across a lot of companies. And I think part of that has to do with the current market condition and then the structure of the business, meaning specifically, if you're a private equity-backed company, the mission is never 20 years down the road. Just sit down, like no one cares 20 years from now what the business looks like. The private equity company that has the business is looking at a 3 to 5 year plan. 3 to 5 year plan, and the number they care about the most is EBITDA. Because your EBITDA is your multiplier. The higher your EBITDA, the more money they'll make on the deal when they try to flip the company. And so that number matters. So those strategies change because typically they'll get a CEO in play. The CEO will have an execution plan that doesn't execute to the EBITDA goals that the private equity firm has, or the shareholders have in a publicly traded company. Although we see less turnover in publicly traded companies than we do in private equity. Private equity, that turnover is much, much higher. I don't have that number, but I know for a fact it is, right? So that EBITDA number really, really does matter. And so you'll see that leadership change shift. And typically with a new leader comes a new mission. And you have to align to it because risk management and risk appetite changes because the business may be willing, the board of directors may say to themselves, we'll get to your question in a second. The board of directors may say to themselves, we're willing to take more risk to reach that growth. And guess what? We as security people at that point, that's the marching order. Where's my military guys? Marching order, right? That's it. Whether you like it or not, that's the law. That's the appetite the business is willing to take. So now we have to refactor our risk management to that risk appetite. And we have to align what we do to that. And there's going to be changes. There's nothing, businesses don't run on a 20-year plan anymore. They don't because technology is developing so much faster. Hence, Wiz to Cursor. Wiz is a 5-year-old company that sold for $32 billion to Google. Whether you like the Wiz model or you don't, that's irrelevant to the fact that in 18 months, they went from 0 to 100 million, and in 5 years, almost to the day, they sold for 32 billion. That flip is what everyone sees. Someone paid, I know, Palo Alto paid $25 billion for CyberArk. I heard a giggle. Thank you. $25 billion for CyberArk. For anyone here still use CyberArk? 2 hands in a room of 200 people. Someone paid $25 billion for it. Decisions are made that don't make sense to you and me. And we're security practitioners. We don't get to make those decisions. We don't get to say it's too risky to the business and have veto power. We get to propose a bill. We're a sole member of Congress. There's 434 other people on that floor, and if all 434 say your bill is stupid, your bill's stupid. And that's the tough reality that we have to kind of swallow that pill, go, man, that sucks, yeah. But there's other opportunities that exist to drive that forward. And with new leadership come new opportunities. And if the CISO, your leadership is smart, they align with that CEO, they align that vision, they recalibrate, and they continue to move with the program, keeping intact what works and aligning the rest of what needs to change in order to really prioritize, protect, and enable the business to grow. We have one more.
Hey, where do you see the role of the CISO in bridging the gap between the business and InfoSec objectives?
I actually love the role of the CISO. I think in large organizations where you need a lot of customer-facing security attention because you're processing data, all the CCPA, GDPR rules, and then all of that third-party risk that we've seen recently with Salesforce, Snowflake, and in so many of the others, I would say that the role of the CISO becomes the voice outside of the security, kind of that sales enablement voice on the security side of what the customers want. And then that becomes the leverage for a CISO to take to enhance investment, because the CISO aligns to security, but they also align directly to sales. So when I talked about that TPRM model, the CISO is a perfect example of that, right? If the CISO is able to take a process from 28 to 4 days, or able to increase the size, who hates SSO tax? Anyone hates SSO tax? Right? You guys know what an SSO tax is? Who doesn't know? Okay, we have people who don't know, so I'm going to explain it. SSO tax is when you buy a SaaS product and you license it, and then they tell you, no, you have to be on our most expensive licensing program to get something as simple as single sign-on. Now, there's CISOs out there that build their program on SSO tax. Then they're on the website for SSO tax going like, that's horrible. But they're there because they'll charge you 10 grand more to do something that really is in the interest of everyone to align. So CISOs help kind of align that SSO tax into it, and then they bring that product security question around how are you managing your code, how are you, like all of those different things the CISO is able to bring because they're bringing the customer's questions, which then in turn has the chief revenue officer going to his boss, CEO or whoever he reports to, like, we're getting all these security questions, they're really slowing us down, let's get with security and get to it. I actually like the CISO role, especially if the person's the right guy in the job.
So you probably see them more in a technology role than like a governance type role, I guess you would say. They have more freedom.
Yeah, the follow-up to that was you probably see him in more like a technology role rather than governance, 100%. Again, as I think a CISO is a sales enabler on the security side, and they're supposed to kind of be that security person on those calls with potential customers and partners to kind of help streamline the security process and the security kind of due diligence that has to happen. And that role is invaluable, right? In large organizations, I mean, Jamil did that at Equifax, right? He built a CISO for every single one of those Equifax business and product lines. And I think that's worked really well for Equifax because if you look at their revenue growth, if you're an investor in their stock, you're obviously enjoying the fact that they're doing really, really well. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that they have CISOs in there. And some of those CISOs may be in the room here or will be here later today. And it'd be a good conversation to ask them about that model because Equifax, Jamil perfected the CISO model at Equifax. The playbook's written. You just have to use it. Anything else? Or we have one more right back there.
So your first 90 days as a new CISO, what was your largest obstacle you had to overcome, and how did you identify it?
My first days as a CISO, largest obstacle I had, trust. And actually understanding what the business does. And I'm still overcoming it. Not even 30 days in. I started October 6th. It's November 5th. So I'll tell you that it's a work in progress. I'm traveling for the next few weeks to meet people and shake hands and meet some of the key people in the business. And I'm going out to actually see the people who earn the money. So we dig pipelines. All the natural gas and oil pipelines, all the electrical fiber lines. That's what Artera does. We're boots on the ground. We have guys in there digging all day long and laying pipe down. So I'm actually going out next week to spend time with them because we enable them. If I can get them more productive, then I can probably get more support for a program I want to build. I don't think a CISO knows what you want to build in your program till after your first 100 days. I'm on not even day 30. So I'm still going through it. I'm happy to follow up on it. Like 2-3 months from now, I'm happy to jump on and tell you what I've actually learned. But right now I'm still, I'm in my honeymoon phase. Not much of a honeymoon, but anyone like Brooklyn Nine-Nine? Anyone seen it? This feels like Jake and Amy's honeymoon. We went to the resort and the captain is there. So you're not really getting a honeymoon. You're more having to deal with the fallout. And, you know, a lot of companies go through change. And so you're having to be the calming water in stormy days. And anytime there's leadership change, that tends to be the case. So, yeah. Anything else? All right, we're at time. Thank you, everyone. I really, really appreciate it. Hang on. Stick there. We're going to do a big, big selfie. Hang on. Everyone get in. I got to do it. We can't not do it. Ready? There we go. One more. You guys are superstars. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kim.